It's time for our lunchtime speaker, everybody. Caryn Harlos became a Libertarian in 2014 during a fortuitous visit to LP.org while reading the party's platform and its statement of principles. Since that time, she has risen to prominence through a nearly endless stream of exuberance and work ethic. Amongst other positions, she has served as the Communications Director and Secretary for the Libertarian Party of Colorado, Region 1 Representative for the Libertarian National Committee, Libertarian Party Historical Preservation Committee Chair of the National Platform Committee for the 2018 and 2020 conventions, and Interim Chair for the 2022 convention. Her particular interest is in party history and its statement of principles, and has been a featured speaker on those topics across the country. In 2018, she was elected as the party secretary on a platform of transparency, accountability, and accessibility, and was wrongfully, in her opinion, suspended in 2021 in retaliation for calling out corruption and lack of backbone in the Libertarian Party leadership to face down the COVID regime. She is appealing that suspension. Additionally, Caryn is the hostess of the educational YouTube channels The Cult of RONR and Pink Flame of Liberty. Caryn's complete Libertarian Party resume can be viewed on LPedia. With no further ado, I give you Ms. Caryn Harlos, Secretary of Exile.
Okay, yeah, start yelling at me because I suck at time. There's no offense at all. All right, well, thank you very much for that introduction, though I do have an update to it, though it has not been official. I have lost my judicial committee appeal. Yes, very much boo. And yesterday was the crime phase, and now is the righteous indignation, pissed off phase. So I don't know the rationale. I do know the one person that voted in my favor is party founder D. Frank Robinson. So when the party founder is on your side, I think you are doing well. So he told me he's trying to pare down his 13-page so far minority opinion. I said make it longer. Because that's going to be the manifesto for the future of this party. I'm going to just speak a tiny bit on that before I get to my talk, because I do think it's very important. We are always going to have ideological foes outside the party. If we don't, we're really not doing our job. But to have what's going on internally in the party right now, we are, in a very real way, I believe, fighting for the life of our party. The fact is that what I was removed for was keeping my campaign promises. I don't care what you think about what I said. The fact is, everyone who voted for me knew exactly what they were getting, and the LNC decided they knew better than the delegates. And whether or not you voted for me, that should offend you to your deepest core. Because the solution is, if you don't like what I was doing, was to vote me out. But the reasons I was suspended, one, they said I violated the NAP by having mean tweets on Twitter that hurt their feelings. Well, too fucking bad. Oh, I take up too much, so I make no apologies for that. Muddecorum. Several things I was removed for, though they would not agree, is being a whistleblower on the New Hampshire issue. That's absolutely true. You can look at the Bill of Particulars against me. One of my crimes was that and they put this in the Bill of Particulars. One of my crimes is that I caused the resignation of Joe Bishop Henchman. You want to know what? That's a feature, not a bug. And if I caused his resignation, you should be thanking me. Corruption. He was corrupt. I liked him as a person. He was corrupt. And he deleted all those emails on the way out, and the LNC never bothered to get them back. But the most offensive thing that happened, and even if you hate every single thing I stand for, was I was denied due process by the Libertarian Party. It would not matter if I murdered children, I still deserved due process. You don't even get to the evidence. And we had an LNC member that even said, if our bylaws were absolutely immoral, we should follow them anyway. And I said, well, I know a lot of police officers that would love to meet you. It's the law. And every single one of you should be absolutely offended by that, And anyone who disagrees with me, I would love to talk with you after here. And if this is being strange or you can pass it along, I will gladly debate any of those 11 fucking cowards that voted to suspend me. Now, on to more pleasant topics. I hope I I didn't hold back at all. I originally gave this talk in May in the Libertarian Party of Kansas. And it was a lot easier talk to give in May, because May was exactly 1 month before the first removal motion for me. And the title of my talk is something that most people would not expect me to be talking about. And it's called The Humanitarian Responsibility of Freedom. And I figured someone like me is the person to give this talk, because I'm known for being very stubbornly principled, and it's this and it's that. So when I talk to you about some of the things I'm saying today, you know that I'm not asking you to water down your principles. Somebody that people trust to be principled, I think, is the only person that could give this kind of talk. Otherwise, people would be sitting there going, is she telling us not to say liberty things? And I think you guys know me well enough to know that's not what I'm saying. But this is to show another side. I do have another side of me when there's not corruption going on, believe it or not. And unfortunately, the libertarian swamp is real, and I will keep trying to drain it as long as I can. Oh, and just one more thing on that. I am rerunning in Reno, and I ask for your vote. So, this talk is about empathy. And again, that might seem strange from someone who became infamous this year, not only for being removed, but for telling supporters of vaccine passports to go fuck themselves with a barbed dildo. But believe it or not, and you know, that wasn't in my list of crimes. You know, that wasn't even the best of me. I could have said a lot worse than they put in there. But the two aren't mutually exclusive. Being empathetic and saying things like that are not mutually exclusive. I came at this topic out of an interest for the way or lack of humane way, and Mr. Quiter knows this because we gave a talk on a similar topic, that the party in libertarianism itself deals with the issues of people with disabilities in the party. And I think we are fairly decent with people with visible disabilities. We have a gentleman in Colorado who's blind, yet he served on our bylaws committee. Now that's kind of complicated. And the way that we went out of our way to help him was wonderful. But we're not so good with invisible disabilities in this party. And this isn't what this talk is about, but it's to let you know how I got to where I'm going to go with this talk. And this topic became near and dear to me because some of you know this and others may not, because I've accomplished quite a bit. But I have autism, and I've been mocked for that quite ruthlessly. I was diagnosed late in life because at one point it was believed that girls simply didn't get autism. So I was only diagnosed like 3 or 4 years ago. And when I was diagnosed, I thought I would get some scorn from the world, but I would get great support from the libertarian community. Whew, I was wrong. I don't think I could have been more wrong. I had someone on the LNC last term tell me I was making it up. I was making it up so I could be an asshole to people, you know, and I doctor shop for that sweet, sweet autism diagnosis like we all do, you know. And Libertarian Party of Colorado people said, your autism's not my problem. Really, would we say that to the blind gentleman? Sucks about that wall you just walked into face first. Too bad for you. We wouldn't. But that made me really start to think about what kind of world we are advocating for. Because the thing is, and I'll get emotional multiple times in this talk. I got emotional at the beginning in anger, but I'll get different kind of emotional here. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm the same online as I am in person. I know people end up making fun of me because I cry on my YouTube videos. I don't care. I really just don't care. Somebody wrote me when all this was going on. It was someone from, I believe it was from Denmark. And it was the sweetest letter I ever got. He said, we're watching across the world what's going on with the Libertarian Party in the USA, because as the USA goes, the other libertarian movement goes, and they've screwed you over. But let me tell you something, lady, I don't know you, but real recognizes real, and you are real. And that meant a great deal to me. So I'll be real to you here today, and not all of it will be pretty. So when I started being very, very open about my autism diagnosis, the most precious thing, I told you, that happens is after the talk, is the parents that come up to me and say, oh my God, thank you. I have an autistic child. And seeing what you have accomplished made me realize my child can accomplish a lot. And that means a great, great deal to me. Nothing's more precious to me than the parents that bring to me their little girls afterwards as the role model for what their little girls can be. We are facing an epidemic in this country. Actually, I'm going to say something that's going to be not a big surprise to all of you. I think most people in the Libertarian Party have autism, by the way. Y'all need to get diagnosed, people. And our INTJs, if you take the Myers-Briggs. There's more INTJs in this room probably in the rest of the state of New York. So we're facing an epidemic in this country, though, where there's a lot of children being diagnosed. And those are going to be our future voters and our future party members. And we need to make this place friendly for all people, differently abled or not. I use the word disability in a weird way because I actually don't believe I'm disabled. Autism is my superpower. I have weaponized autism, and I use it for freedom. And a lot of that has to do with what happened to me, by the way. The LNC will get really, really, really mad at me for saying this, but a lot of the communication problems were that people with autism communicate differently. We offend people sometimes without meaning it because we're just blunt, and we don't realize it. And some of it has to do with that. Not all of it, but some of it has to do with that. So when I started thinking about this, I really went into, at least when you can't see how somebody might be different, we really do as libertarians try to fit a lot of square pegs into round holes. We're great on some kinds of diversity. We're great on LGBTQ issues. I'm also a member of the LGBTQ community. I just don't usually make a big deal out of it. I'm bisexual. No big deal. It's great that I can say that now. Not everyone can. There's still some areas of the country you can't, but that's improving day by day. We're great with some diversities. We need to be greater with others. So the way I started thinking about our responsibilities, and the way I usually start this talk, is I just look at you all and say, okay, you ready? Welcome to the Libertarian Thunderdome, bitches, because that's what it's like sometimes in our party. And very few people want to live in Thunderdome. But that is what it is. If you've been to a Facebook group, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I often think about how our ideas scare people, or at least a lot of times we can scare people. And I wonder why, because I don't think our ideas are scary. And I think sometimes we forget that our ideas can be scary. And I started to wonder, well, why do some people think they're scary if I don't? And I ask you to ask yourself that. And it's a very easy thing. They're scary because there are vulnerable people in this world. And vulnerable people are scared people. So here's audience participation time. Now, actually, my whole talk is audience participation. I don't care if people yell out stuff. I love it, actually. But I want to ask you right now, don't overthink this because you're libertarians. And now the minute I said overthink this, you all are going, oh my God. I said, all right. Listen, people, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Don't overthink it. What is the first objection you will hear when you present libertarianism to somebody?
Selfish. The roads.
The roads! I've never, ever had that. Nobody ever guessed it. Sometimes it's the whole room. But what about the roads? But who will build the roads? Don't you think that's weird? Like, what is this road fetish? I said that the first time I heard about libertarianism, more anarchy, but yeah, who will build the roads? And why is that the first question people ask? Are people really that worried about roads?
Yes.
I don't think they are, but we'll get to
You
that.
haven't seen the roads here.
Yeah, you have.
But I mean, it's a flat thing. Like it's not that complicated. Why are people thinking more like, well, who will defend the country or who will do this? But no, it's who will build the roads. But I think it's a really important question. And that actually started me asking, why are people so interested in the roads? I became very, very curious about that. And the fact is, that isn't really what they're asking. For some reason, roads have become a symbolic stand-in for the question they're really asking, and they might not even know the question they're really asking. They're not really asking who will build the roads. What they're asking you is who will keep grandmas from starving in the streets if your world is implemented. That's really what they're asking you. Nobody really cares that much about the roads. We all know Amazon's going to build them. They want to sell us stuff. But there isn't as obvious an answer as to who's going to take care of the vulnerable people in your world. Because Amazon's not going to do that. There's no profit in it. And not that there's anything wrong with profit, but that's not all there is in the world. And Larkin Rose has a really interesting video on this, and I'm picking on him because he's a public figure. And sorry, LNC, but public figures are allowed to be mocked, including myself. Some things people say about me aren't very nice, but I don't try to remove them for it. Larkin Rose, of course, when asked who will build the roads, he did the typical libertarian response that I've done, that you've done, is get all stupid and mocky and go derpity derp and say people who are building them now, blah, 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 blah. And that's funny, but when you realize what they're really asking, you realize how absolutely what an insensitive jerk you sound like when you answer that way. If what they're really asking is who's going to take care of vulnerable people in the world, and you go derp. So I ask that when people ask you questions, try to find out what they mean, not what they say. Because sometimes people don't even really know what they mean. And Larkin almost got to the point when he said, the government doesn't run all the grocery stores, but we don't think we would all starve if they didn't. The fact is, we probably would think that if the government had been running them for 100 years, people would probably think they starved. But that's getting more to the point. You know, he almost had it, but he missed it. He was so close to the real point that I wish he connected the dots. You know, often we say the expression, say the quiet thing out loud in a bad way. You know, like, you know, when a racist finally admits they're a racist, we go, oof, they said the quiet part out loud. But the fact is, with the roads thing, we need to say the quiet part out loud, saying you're not really concerned about the roads, are you? You're concerned about vulnerable people. Now, I use a lot of Christian examples in my talks. I make no apologies for that. However, you don't need to be a religious person to appreciate wisdom from almost any religion in the world. And there's something that those of you who are Christians, you're going to laugh about. The typical prayer circle, if you've ever been in one, somebody starts off and you go around. And the first person that prays will usually, you know, everyone's supposed to be confessing their sins. And they'll usually say something like, oh, I don't read my Bible enough. You know, it's like, oh, you terrible sinner. You know, it's such a safe sin. It's such a self-righteous sin, isn't it? Oh, dear God, I don't read my Bible enough. You want to know what? If you're ever in a prayer circle, I'm going to encourage you to do something. It's called give the gift of going first. If you're the first one, don't say you don't read your Bible enough. Say something hard. I watch too much pornography, or something that really is meaningful, so that the people that go after you feel safe in confessing what they're really struggling with. And that example is the same thing here. When people are asking you silly questions, give them the gift of articulating what they really need without embarrassment, so that we can start answering the real questions that people are asking with empathy. Okay, let me find here. So the reason why people are concerned about vulnerable people and why they're not concerned about the roads, again, because Amazon will build the roads because it's in all of our self-interest. We all want to buy things, they want to sell things, roads will exist. Same thing with grocery stores. None of us want to starve, we all have to eat. So there will always be grocery stores. So the question now, I started thinking, isn't even who will keep grandma from starving in the street. That isn't even it either. It's why would anyone care? Why would anyone be motivated? to keep grandma from starving in the street in your libertarian utopia. No profit motive in it. You're going to have to probably give away some of your money. We're all selfish, right? I mean, that's what they think. And remember, people that disagree with us aren't evil and they're not stupid. They just disagree with us. And we need to meet them where they're at. And we oftentimes act like we're much smarter and superior. And it can be really hard to lose that, because once you see the world as we do, it's hard to not see it any other way. But we act like Thunderdome isn't possible. We act like all we need is freedom, and the world will be wonderful. You sprinkle liberty dust on everything, and all of a sudden everything will be baskets of puppies. But that's not the case. The fact is, libertarian dystopia is very, very possible. Liberty is a necessary but not sufficient precondition for human flourishing. It's liberty plus. Because you can be a perfectly ideologically sound libertarian and be an asshole that puts no black sign allowed on your business. Everyone could do that. And they could still be perfectly libertarian, but is that a world you want to live in? It's not a world that I want to live in. And I'll make another religious example here. My pastor used to say, when an asshole becomes a Christian, he doesn't stop being an asshole, he just becomes an asshole with the Bible. Same thing with libertarians. And there's a lot of libertarian assholes. I think we know them. We might be them half the time. So we have to admit that libertarian dystopia is possible, and that these people are scared sometimes of what we say for very good reason. Now I want to be something clear here, and this is why I said that I'm the type of person who can give this talk, is I'm not claiming that in order to be a libertarian, you have to be liberty plus. You don't. All you have to do is not aggress against other people. You can be a perfect libertarian and be an asshole. You can be a perfect libertarian and be a racist. You're an asshole still. And we need to start taking accountability for our own assholes. So, and this isn't going to surprise you guys now, though it might have surprised people back then. Back when I first gave this speech. There are many different ways people come to libertarian ideas. They could be utilitarians, they could be consequentialists. I may be using a term here, some of you are familiar with, some of you aren't. I am what's called the Heart of Deontologist. And what that is a very strict ethics, rules-based worldview. The saying amongst the deontologists is, though the sky may fall, do what is right. And I think I've proven that in the past 5 months, because I did what I thought was right, and I was politically assassinated for it, and if I went back to June, I'd do it all over again. That just happens to be my ethics. Not right, not wrong, it's just me. It's just how I am. But you want to know what? If I thought doing the right thing would lead to a whole lot more human misery rather than human flourishing, I'd probably still believe it, but I wouldn't be quite so eager to promote it. Let me see here. And people also don't understand. We love to use buzzwords like the Nonaggression Principle. I'm going to tell you something that you might not have thought about lately. People who don't hold to the Nonaggression Principle don't see themselves as aggressors. They certainly don't think that taxing for charity is aggression. That's just completely foreign to them. And you're not going to get anywhere just by simply calling everything aggression and calling everyone aggression. Because what they see when they hear us talk is they think the worst Darwinian survival of the fittest, nature red in tooth and claw. And there are, the joke I gave to the Mises Caucus people, once Dave Smith asked me, what is your one criticism of the Mises Caucus? And I said, you're a bunch of young bucks full of piss and vinegar. Then they made a t-shirt that said, young bucks full of piss and vinegar, and gave me one, and I thought that was pretty funny. Young bucks full of piss and vinegar think they're invulnerable. And you're not, but you think you are. And that's great. You know, that, to me, I think that's an absolutely necessary phase of being a young man. But you want to know who don't think they're invulnerable nearly ever? Women and minorities. Up until very recently, with technological developments, women were very vulnerable. When you're carrying around a baby inside of you, you're very vulnerable. When you're taking care of young children, you're very vulnerable. When you're a minority that exists in a country where your ancestors not that long ago were slaves, you feel very vulnerable. So our message that sounds like survival of the fittest is not going to appeal to those people. We wonder why we don't have more women and minorities in the party, and it isn't because our meetings are a sausage fest. Let me tell you something, guys, and everyone else. Women like to be in a room full of men. Most women. I have a single friend who said that she was looking for a date. I go, just go to a Libertarian Party meeting, you'll have a pick of the litter. And just like I have a male friend who said he goes to Green Party meetings to pick up chicks. So it's just a different problem. So it isn't the problem is that there's too many men. The problem is that we do not speak to and recognize the felt vulnerability of women. And I'm not saying we need to compromise our message, but we do need to recognize it. And recognize that it's very real and that it's very legitimate. And again, I'm the hardest asses of the hard asses. So if I'm saying that, I hope some people who wouldn't hear this from anyone else will hear it from me. I'm going to give you an example here. It might seem like a tangent, but it's a real life example within the Libertarian Party. And it's became even more real this past 5 months. In 2016, I was assaulted at the 2016 National Convention. It was my first convention. People hear the word assault, they're not legal people, they think that means you got taken into an alley and beat up. Are you?
Oh, no.
Okay, I was like, are you bidding?
No.
Assault means, in legal terms, it's an imminent threat of violence. It doesn't require actual physical contact, though this person did make physical contact with me. Though I do think that was by accident, and even he was surprised by it. And I reported it. And absolutely nothing was done. And it happened in a crowd of people. Y'all here in New York will know about the Kitty Genovese story, right? Where she was being murdered and screaming, and everyone heard it, and no one called the police. It's the bystander effect. So I was in a crowd of hundreds of libertarians saying loudly, please step back from me. I'm feeling very threatened by you. You're making me very uncomfortable. Please go, please, you're in my space. And nobody did a damn thing. I think they all thought somebody else would. And then when I reported it, everyone's like, well, what do you want me to do about it? I don't know who that is. Somebody else's problem. And I got to the point where I thought, am I imagining this? All these people are around, am I imagining this? Until one of the Colorado delegates, who's not a large guy, and the guy that was menacing me was probably 300 pounds, and big bouncer like type guy. And the guy in Colorado, after the convention, said, I saw what happened, and I was about to fly over the table at this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm about to die. Because he wasn't, but he was the one person, and he said, I'll tell anybody who wants to hear. So I reported it to the LNC at the time. They did nothing. I reported it again in 2018, not because I wanted something done for me, it was because I didn't want that to happen to anybody else. But I would invite you guys to go look at the folder of evidence against me and my removal. You want to know one of the things that's in the evidence against me? Me complaining that I was assaulted in 2016. That's in the folder of evidence against me. How dare they? I didn't complain politely enough, apparently. I wasn't the perfect victim. And we wonder why people sometimes just think we're clueless. But you can go look for yourself. 2 other things that are in that folder of evidence against me, by the way, to show how clueless. Prayers. I posted 2 prayers on Facebook that said, some people have wronged me and please help me, God, to forgive them. That's in the folder of evidence against me. Apparently, you're not allowed to pray now either. If I tell you the evidence against me was a joke, please go look for yourself. Really, please go look for yourself. And the fact that the suspension on those grounds was upheld is a sad, sad day for this party. And I really do hope that the delegates in 2022, even if I'm not reelected, at least repudiate that bullshit and take back the nap, because it's not mean words. Oh, and just to scare you all, in a way, the language for removal of an officer for cause by the LNC, you want to know where that exact language is mirrored? In disaffiliation. So what if the LNC one day decides it doesn't like your tweets? You don't think state parties are going to start to be affiliated if this ball keeps on rolling? You don't think that's about what's about to happen in Delaware? It is. When you have a state chair, a national chair that tried to take over New Hampshire over tweets. So this is no longer about me. This is about reclaiming our ideology, because it's going down a very, very dangerous road. So, let me find here. I went way off script, as I tend to do. So we seem to forget that there can be a bad use of rights, and we make libertarian heroes out of the people who stand for their rights. And in some ways, they are a libertarian hero. In Colorado, we had that guy who refused to bake a gay wedding cake. I'm thinking, you're a dumbass. The money's just as great to bake the fucking cake. But I've never used the government to force him. But he's also not a libertarian hero. He's really not. And I'm a religious person saying that, but let's use one we can all agree upon. The guy who puts the No Blacks Allowed sign, is he standing for his freedom? Yeah, but he's not a libertarian hero. We can defend his rights. We need to be like the old school ACLU when they actually used to care about civil liberties, and they defended the Westboro Baptist Church. But they didn't make heroes out of them. They're not freedom heroes, but they're people with rights who have the right to carry stupid signs. And we swing too far one way or the other. Okay, thank you. So once we realize that there is a bad use of rights, we need to start holding our own communities accountable for that. Still allow them their freedom. Don't go too far and say, oh, that's a violation. I guess what I'm trying to say is our libertarianism isn't a complete set of morality. It's only a set of justice. And that's why I said you need Liberty Plus to have human flourishing. Morality is much bigger than our politics. Our politics say you can have the No Blacks sign allowed. Our morality should absolutely be repulsed by that. And that's where we need to find the empathetic balance and not make heroes out of people who are using their rights in a bad way. It's still their right. Just because you have a right to do something doesn't make it right to do it. And when we start doing that, I think people will stop being so scared about what we are actually saying. So I'm going to close here with two things, and again going back to my churchy background. There's something in Christianity, at least in Calvinist Christianity, that we call the cage stage. If you haven't heard of that, that's for new converts who are so zealous for what they think is their new truth that they need to be locked in a cage for a year because they do more harm than good. And some of us libertarians have never gotten out of cage stage, even though we might have been libertarians 10 years. So I'm going to quote something here from the Apostle Paul in the Bible, who said, "When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child and I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things." We need to put away our libertarian childish things. And then we'll start appealing to adults that actually are have human empathy and human feeling about what's going on in the world, because our philosophy is beautiful. Let's not make it about celebrating the No Black sign allowed, even though we can still defend the right for the person to do it. And one other thing. And it's another religious thing, but it's from a very beautiful prayer that I think everyone can relate to, and it's called the Prayer of St. Francis. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just a few lines from it. And the prayer goes, "O Lord, make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. And I think if we try to keep that foremost in our mind, we'll all fail. I fail every day. That our message, without being unprincipled, will be much more attractive to a world that is dying to hear what we have to say. So I do think that needs to be us. We can still be libertarian, but we need to be principled, decent human beings that talk to people with respect for their actual concerns. Thank you.
Caryn, thank you so much for traveling all distance to come be with us today, and thank you for enduring whatever you endured last night. I don't even know, but I'm glad you got here, and it was really great to hear you speak. Thank you.
The honor is always all mine. For you to be invited to these events each time, I can't even tell you how much it touches me.
Great. Thank you for your gratitude.